Alright, good evening folks, it's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to another short war video, and today we have very big news out of Ukraine, Russia, Venezuela, and the Middle East, and let's jump right into it. This morning, Pakistan launched massive airstrikes in the Afghan capital of Kabul, causing major destruction across the city as both sides deployed countless tanks and other weapons to the border. We also have news that this morning, 3 US B52 strategic bombers were tracked flying near Cuba as they were on their way to buzz Venezuelan airspace as tensions soar between Maduro and US officials. Meanwhile, near Sweden, the Russian-attacked submarine Novorossiysk has been spotted limping back to Russia in Swedish waters, which triggered a national security alert in which the Coast Guard deployed vessels to intercept it. And we also have news that Ukraine has secretly warned NATO officials of Russian military plans in Belarus and has notified NATO members that may be affected in a very vague and ominous statement. So, very big news today from pretty much every region of the world, and let's jump right into our first post, which goes to OSINT Warfare. And this right here is one of our biggest stories of the day. Right here we're seeing the continuation of the Afghan-Pakistan saga that's currently taking place between those two countries, and this morning we've seen that the Pakistan Air Force carried out airstrikes in Kabul, which is the capital of Afghanistan, targeting several oil tankers, and it looks like these were very large airstrikes, and so far the Afghan government has not been able to repel these Pakistan airstrikes. So let's take a look at our first video and see these strikes on camera right in the middle of the capital city. And there you have it right there. There's all that smoke coming up from those oil tankers right there in the middle of the city. And as you can see, it looks like city life is generally going about as normal business while there's a massive fire breaking out over here at the oil storage right in the middle of the capital. So a very short video just showing the initial part of the strike right there. But also we have some more footage and more information here in our next post, which goes to Insider Paper. And in this post right here, we actually have a video showing the exact aftermath, the moments right after the strike and the massive fire that's actually on the ground causing all this smoke, and it looks like when the oil was struck, it must have distributed it across a large area on the ground, because it looks like the fires also engulfed multiple different streets in the capital city. So let's take a look at this video and see how widespread the fire is. So right here you see there is the massive fire right here. It's engulfing a huge part of the streets here, and it looks like people were trying to run away from the fire and get out of the vicinity of the heat, but obviously a massive fire right there, and what caused this was oil tankers that were hit. So that is the aftermath of it right there in that video. But also moving on to our next post here, this one goes to Conflict Radar, and we've heard from a Taliban spokesperson, and they claim that one of the explosions in Kabul was caused by a gas and fuel tank, and they're trying to allege that maybe it got sparked on its own accord, but also we have the reports as well suggesting that a Pakistani airstrike was what caused that to actually occur. So a little bit of a misinformation campaign, I would say, by the Taliban. So far it is generally confirmed that the Pakistanis did conduct an airstrike on Kabul, but it looks like the Taliban are disputing that. So we do have one more video here to show you of how widespread this is, so let's take a look. And right here you can see, let me go ahead and mute that video by the way, but right there you can see there is multiple different fires right there. We can actually see that on the ground in our last clip we just looked at, but here it is from an aerial view, and you see the flames are engulfing all the way up. It looks like 10 stories. It almost matches the height of that building on the right there. So a lot of fire right there, and I don't see any first responders showing up to deal with it. So kind of interesting to see that, and it looks like it will be raging for quite some time, according to the slow response of the first responders. But jumping into our next post here, this one goes to Clash Report. And also, by the way, Kabul is not the only place that's been struck by Pakistani airstrikes, and we've also seen here in this video, in this post, that it looks like Kandahar was also hit by multiple aerial munitions launched from Pakistani aircraft. So we do have a video showing that as well, of multiple hits in the same area. So let's take a look at this video as well. And there it is right there. You can see multiple different hits right there. It looks like 4 or 5 in a row out here in Kandahar. And this just shows you the Pakistanis are on a very wide-ranging aerial campaign against Afghanistan and the government there. So a very big hit once again in multiple different areas, and there seems to be no Taliban resistance so far in the air to anything that Pakistan's doing. So largely the Pakistanis are putting a walloping right now on Afghanistan, and there's really not much defense coming out of Afghanistan. So with that, we're moving into our next post here, and this one goes to Defense Index. So meanwhile, while the Pakistanis are putting the hurt on the Afghan Taliban, right now the Taliban are whipping out the fine China, or some might say the fine Russian. They're whipping out the Soviet-era T-55 tanks and moving them toward the Pakistan border in the Spin Boldak area. And right now, the Spin Boldak area, that's currently a hotbed of fighting right now. It seems like there's a lot of artillery fire being focused around that area, and also a lot of deployments that we're seeing here in this video heading for that region. So let's take a look here and see these Soviet-era T-55 tanks moving through the streets of Afghanistan. Let's take a look. So as you can see right here, there is the old Soviet T-55 tanks rolling through the streets of Afghanistan, and I tell you, that's like straight out of a museum right there. I bet the Russians would love to get their hands on that right now because they need that badly. But as you can see, there is the Taliban driving the tank and driving this old jalopy to the Pakistani border. So very interesting to see that. And once again, they are whipping out the finest equipment that the Taliban have at their disposal, apparently. But moving into our next post here, this one goes to Defense Index once again. Also, by the way, they did pick up speed in that old jalopy. It was actually going very slow in that last video, but I got a video here showing the thing actually picking up quite a bit of speed. So this museum piece is actually hauling ass down the streets. So let's take a look at this video and show you this T-55 hauling butt. And there it goes right there. The Taliban are whipping that T-55 through traffic right there in the middle of the crowded streets of Afghanistan, and it is heading toward the Pakistani border yet again. Just another angle of it showing you this sort of humorous clip right here of the thing whipping through traffic. But that is it. That's the Taliban moving the stuff toward the border. But anyways, moving into our next post here, this one also goes to Defense Index, and Pakistan is also returning the favor by moving their heavy weaponry to the border as well, including tanks and also other equipment toward the Spin Buldak area with the ongoing clashes with the Taliban militants. So let's take a look at the Pakistani deployments on their side of the border. Alright, so right here you can see it looks like the Pakistanis are hauling in their tanks on the back of lowboy trailers, which is a little bit more high-tech than what the Taliban were doing, which was just straight up driving them through the streets. But it looks like, I really honestly can't tell you what tank that is just by glancing at it right here. Maybe somebody can let me know. It looks like maybe possibly Soviet tanks. I really can't tell. Forgive me for not being able to identify that. But we can see here equipment moving toward the border on the Pakistani side, getting ready to confront the Taliban. So there's the deployments there from Pakistan. But moving into our next one here, this one goes to Nexta. And meanwhile, while all the crazy airstrikes and equipment deployments have been happening, we also have heard a wild statement that allegedly Pakistan and Afghanistan have agreed to a 48-hour ceasefire. And that's just a 2-day ceasefire, by the way, so not a very long one. But the truce has already come into effect, according to reports, and during this time, diplomats plan to discuss ways to stabilize the situation and prevent further incidents. So one thing's clear, they're definitely preparing to attack each other if this doesn't go one side's way or another. So I'm really a little bit doubtful about this ceasefire right here, but this whole situation is so unpredictable, it could actually be solved during this 48-hour period. It's just hard to tell right now because I was not expecting this conflict to break out in the first place, and neither of us did actually. So now we're hearing a ceasefire is in effect, so we'll have to wait and see how this turns out, but right now I would say it's a 50-50 chance of the conflict continuing or it actually being solved by the diplomats. So that's what we're hearing right now. But moving into our next post here, this one goes to OSINT Defender, and moving away from our news from Pakistan and Afghanistan, we have some news about Venezuela right now because the US is making very big moves on Venezuela this morning that we see right here in this post from OSINT Defender. Because we can see here that two B52H Stratofortress long-range strategic bombers were seen orbiting over the southern Caribbean off the coast of Venezuela, roughly 100 miles from Caracas, which is the capital of Venezuela, in an apparent show of force against the Maduro regime. So you can see right here, this thing was very close to Caracas, and this is clearly, in my opinion, a show of force. I agree with OSINT Defender 100%, and it looks like they're trying to scare the Venezuelan government into compliance, but we'll have to wait and see if this works. Also, by the way, these took off from Shreveport in Louisiana, and they went all the way down here to Venezuela to pay Mr. Maduro a visit. So they did pay them a visit. They did not cross into Venezuelan airspace, though. I want to make that clear, but they did go right off the coast in international waters and circled around out there to basically show them that they were there and they care very much about the Maduro regime. So we saw that there in that post. But moving into our next post here, this one goes to CNW, and we've also seen another development with the B52s orbiting around Venezuela, because we have seen that both B52s have just begun heading north away from Los Roques after about 2 hours of circling inside the Makita FIR. So it does look like they are heading away from Venezuela. So they did not actually do anything except for simply show up and let their presence be known, but they are apparently heading away at this time. So we did see that there in this post. But also, moving into our next post here, we did see a response from Venezuela, because apparently, according to reports, Venezuelan F-16s were dispatched and went airborne from El Libertador Air Base in Aragua. So it does look like Maduro did launch his F-16s to go out and intercept these aircraft, but it's unclear if they actually came into contact contact with them. So we're hearing these reports, but we're waiting on more information to corroborate this if it is actually true or not. But whatever the case is though, Maduro is definitely getting scared, and that is not going to change anytime soon. But with that, we're now moving into our next post, which also goes to OSINT Technical, and we've got another big story, by the way. Let's move over to Sweden and inside of Europe, because right now we are seeing a big Russian failure manifesting itself right off the coast of Sweden, and we have ourselves an injured animal, an injured submarine that's lurking around the Swedish coast. And we've seen right here in this post that Swedish forces, including Gripen fighters and a Sturzo-class MCM, stalked the Russian submarine Novorossiysk as it limped back to port in the Baltic this week, and the Novorossiysk has been actively tailed by NATO forces as it returned from the Mediterranean. So right here you can see there is one image right here. You see there's the Swedish following this broken submarine right here, and also for the record, this submarine has a major diesel leak, and it first happened near Gibraltar actually, and we're now seeing this thing limping by Sweden. So very embarrassing for the Russians, by the way. That submarine is a huge failure right now, and it's limping home like an injured animal. So it's being mocked by everybody. It's being mocked by NATO, and pretty much everybody out there is mocking this whole submarine situation, and we're seeing a continuation of it today. And also, by the way, we do have a better picture of it here in this post from Flytux Network, because there is the submarine as seen, I believe, from a Swedish Coast Guard vessel, and there it is right there. There's the Novorossiysk right there in the water after suffering that major malfunction near Gibraltar. So it's trying to make its way back home. I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of shocked it's made it this far, but it's apparently made it right near Sweden and lurking around their coast. So I would say this thing probably poses no threat right now. Right now, the Russians are simply trying to recover their submarine. That's a disaster at this point. So, you know, it pretty much is what it is. Nothing too crazy. But moving into our next post here, this one goes to War Translated. Also, we are hearing a weirdly ominous statement from Ukraine this morning from Zelensky, and Zelensky said that Ukraine is aware of Russia's plans in Belarus and will inform the partners who may be affected, and at this stage, we will not make this information public. So I don't really know what this is about, but apparently Zelensky has information and intelligence that something is happening in Belarus at the hands of Putin's army or regime. So we don't know what this is right now, but obviously a very ominous statement, and Belarus is always being dragged into something that Putin is planning. So we have to keep a close eye on this, but right now the information is not public according to Zelensky, so we're waiting to hear more information and maybe some leaks about what this could be. So it sounds very odd and also very ominous, so we'll have to wait and see. But moving into our next post here, this one goes to Special Herzon Cat. We've also seen this morning that a Russian oil refinery complex in Ufa, about 1,400 kilometers from the front line, was targeted by drones yet again, and this plant right here has a very, very large oil refining capacity, and it looks like it was struck by another Ukrainian drone. So let's take a look at the video and see this thing getting struck by a very long strike from Ukraine. So right there you can see it. That is the Ukrainian drone flying over Ufa right now and flying toward the oil refining complex, and it looks like it is hauling butt and it's heading that way. And sadly, I don't have the initial moment of impact on the refinery, but that was the drone flying over Ufa right there, just to give you an idea of what it looked like. But moving into our next post here, this one goes to Preston Stewart on Twitter as well. And we've also gotten a very disturbing report today that apparently the Russians are attacking UN convoys, and they're even recording it on their camera and posting it on the internet. So let's take a look. And we can see right here that the Russians are now proudly sharing the footage of their attack against a UN convoy in Kherson yesterday, and they don't claim it was a case of mistaken identity, and instead they insist that the convoy was military in nature, and even if it wasn't, they have banned any vehicle movement, and therefore that somehow justifies a strike on a humanitarian target. So the Russians are once again back to their usual behavior, targeting things that they are not allowed to target, and humanitarian convoys. So I can't show the video, but I can show this image right here. There's clearly UN trucks right here, and it looks like they were struck inside of Kherson by Russian forces. So once again, that is not permitted, and the Russians are back to it yet again, and honestly, they really never stopped. But this time they're filming it and they're uploading it to the internet. So not good right there. Once again, another Russian war crime right on camera that we're seeing right here. But moving on to our next post, this one goes to Preston Stewart yet again. Also, by the way, another big story that's currently happening is the U.S. is still considering very strongly sending Tomahawk long-range missiles to Ukraine, and we're hearing today a Russian reaction from mill bloggers about this idea from the U.S. So the Russian mill bloggers are saying that the West no longer experiences fear of the consequences of its actions, and that they should fear us. But for that, appropriate actions must be taken. So the Russian mill bloggers calling for action against the United States to scare us away from sending Tomahawk missiles to the Ukrainian government. And I'll be honest, at this point, I'm really not sure if anybody's really scared of Russia. The only thing that people are scared of are the nuclear weapons that Russia possesses. Outside of that, their military is really nothing nothing to be scared of whatsoever. And I think Vladimir Putin knows that himself. So the Russian mill bloggers are once again just running their mouths, and there's really nothing to it. It's just pretty much the paper bear back at it again. But anyways, moving on to our next post. This one goes to Visegrad24. Also, by the way, we do have one more story right here, and this one's actually out of North Korea. We have seen that North Korea is currently building massive anti-tank barriers along the border with South Korea, and the Republic of Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff confirmed satellite imagery showing that Pyongyang is currently conducting fortification work along the military demarcation line, and on 4 sections, concrete anti-tank obstacles are being erected, stretching about 10 kilometers in total, with a height of 4 to 5 meters and a thickness of around 2 meters. So right here you can see, there it is on the map, and for some reason North Korea is fortifying its border yet again, and we're really not sure what prompted it. It could simply be maybe they're deciding to just spontaneously protect their border, I don't know, or it could be maybe they're planning to do something, and this is preparations for a wartime setting. So whatever the case is, they are clearly getting ready for some type of provocation or some type of action from their side against South Korea. So I'm not really sure what this is about, but right now it's all up to speculation, but we do see that they are definitely building massive anti-tank barriers along the border with South Korea. So very disturbing to see that as well. But with that, folks, that is actually our last post of the video. So if you found today's video informative, please smack the like button and also subscribe to the channel as well for more daily short war updates just like this one. And also, by the way, if you want to support our channel, you can do so on our Patreon page, and the link is in the description below for Patreon, where you can go over there and sign up for a monthly membership, and it could be as little as $5 or $10 a month. Any amount helps the channel tremendously and helps to keep us reporting the news, and we appreciate that very, very much. But we will see you all tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern on our next nightly war news stream, and we will see you all then. But with that, bye-bye for now.